I love that you bought flowers for this podcast and probably not for your wife.
It's the arrival. I came in the league, went straight for the title.
Touchdown! Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvelous. Gets past Ransom. Donovan Edwards. Touchdown. The Don.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State.
This is The Rivalry, sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
This is The Rivalry Podcast. It's Jace and JP, your garbage-free college football podcast focused on the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. At RivalPod on social media. And Wheel Route is brought to you by the J Company. Fall in love with your home all over again at the JAEcompany.com.
See what we got today.
Hey, what time did Ohio State play this weekend?
You know what? We're not even going to get.
It's nice to wake up as a back-to-back-to-back.
We're not even going to get started.
Ooh. Wild prediction for 2024.
This can be as unhinged as you want it to be.
And by the way, if you're not watching on YouTube, you can as well at RivalPod. Wild prediction for 2024. Man.
I'm so crazy that I feel like I'm going to say something, but it's really not that unhinged.
Okay, no, take a
Jim
shot.
Jim Harbaugh's going to be gone at the end of the year.
We're going to do this again. Every year since this man has been coaching Michigan, it's Jim Harbaugh's leaving.
When have I
NFL.
ever said that?
I feel like you say it every year.
I've only done this podcast for 2 years.
Well, that's well, then you said it twice, man.
I don't think I said it last year. That's my prediction.
I
think
I'll go coaching route too. I'll go coaching route.
Ryan Day is not going to be the head coach at Ohio State.
No, he will. He will. I think at the end of 2024, I think Lincoln Riley's done at USC.
Ooh, at the end of it?
At the end of the because I think they're not firing him in the offseason.
See, I think this question is specifically like after this season going into 2024.
So that's cheating, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, and Michigan would know all about it.
Stop it.
So give me something. I still think that's it's probably accurate.
I think the wild prediction is going to be. I think you are likely to see. I think Michigan and Ohio State play back to back in the game in the Big Ten championship.
Ooh,
I think they play back to back weeks. I can't think of another team coming in, knowing what Oregon's going to lose in Bo Nix, knowing what Washington loses in Michael Penix Jr. I can't think of another team coming in that upsets the balance of power. Now, in the long run, sure, and I think it'll make the conference better. Yeah. But next year, I don't see any reason why Michigan and Ohio State wouldn't play back to back.
And I don't disagree with that. I think next year's going to be super interesting because, and we're going to get to this more because transfer portal stuff has been huge, especially this morning. We're recording this on a Monday, and some big news broke that we're going to get to. That actually broke before we got to record this podcast, which is pretty nice. It never happens that way.
What happens is when you record on a Monday morning, because you're trying to turn this podcast around as quickly as possible, is stuff happens midweek. And then you go, well, crap. That's
that happened numerous times this season.
One of the things is going to be, Ohio State's finding out who's going to play in their bowl game, who's not, looking at Marvin Harrison Jr. That stuff will probably be out as soon as we stop recording
100%.
Today. And that's a bummer.
News all over.
Before we get to that, though, let's talk about the big elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Quite literally, because it's Alabama. College football playoff. So college football playoff rankings come out during Selection Sunday, which for us was yesterday. Michigan will play Alabama in the Rose Bowl. Mm-hmm. Washington will play Texas in the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. Both of those on January 1st. And the big question was, and I think by the time all the dust settled, you knew Michigan would be number one.
Yeah.
You almost guaranteed.
You knew
figured
Washington was going to be up.
There was a lot of consensus that Texas was just about absolutely to be in the playoff and figured would go number 3. The big question, though, was at 4. Where you had a 13-0 Florida State team as a conference champion with a backup quarterback. Mm-hmm. You also had a 12-1 Alabama that won their conference championship but lost to Texas, and a 12-1 Georgia, who is, I know it's not supposed to be what have you done? It's more what have you done this season? But back-to-back defending national champion Georgia at 12-1
in a close game against Alabama.
Whose only loss was to Alabama. What do you do with that? And I think you and I were both a little bit torn on what to do with this scenario.
It's not that I'm torn. It's more so that I just feel bad because
who do you think should have gone in?
I think they got it right.
You think Alabama should have been 4?
Yeah, sure. Okay. I would say that.
Talk to me.
I think it just sucks. You feel bad for Florida State because while there is a rule in place for the committee that states that they can take into account significant injuries that could impact the play of the team moving forward, there is a rule that says that in the guidelines for how they can select the Final Four. Do I look at that Florida State team, and I watched the entire game of that Louisville game, do I feel like with their quarterback being hurt and their backups being in, do I feel like they are a top 4 team? I just don't. But do I hate to see a team that works their butt off, that goes undefeated, that people didn't even think were going to win that conference championship game? They thought that would be the one that would knock them out.
Yep.
They go out there and they still win the game. Louisville's not a bad team. And then they
beat Notre Dame this year. And you go out and you still win your champion. You check all the boxes. You do everything in your power to solidify yourself. And to not get that chance sucks. So do I like seeing that? No. But do I think they were a top 4 team with that injury? No. And it stinks to be able to say that because you'd like to reward them for being like, I forget who it even was that got on there immediately after and said, like, you feel for these kids because that's what they are. Yeah.
You feel for these kids that go out there and they work hard throughout the week and they study film and they go out and they pass every test you're asking them to pass. And you still don't reward that. And it feels like a weird punishment. But I do think on the other end of things, you can't put Georgia in over them because while I think Georgia's still probably a top 4 team, they lost the game that they needed to win. That they lost. When I look at Alabama, I go, who has been playing the best recently? It's probably Alabama.
Even that, and I'll give you my spiel here in a minute, but even that I would disagree with. Like, Alabama obviously played a very good game against Georgia, but we're also talking about full body of work. This is the same Alabama team that lost to Texas, same Alabama team.
Who's number 3? The
same Alabama team that barely scraped past South Florida. Do you remember that
early
one? 17-7. But it doesn't matter if it's based on early in the year. Why are we playing games in September?
Well, and I think that's the bigger question. Is you look at this after the committee selected everybody, and you go, well, why am I scheduling anything? Because you can have a team that goes undefeated, but if one key player gets hurt,
and that's my point on Florida State is to go 13-0 to win your conference. The committee says they value wins, they value conference championships, they value all this stuff. Why is Florida State playing the regular season then? To go 13-0 like that.
Well, and that's why that rule exists.
And if we're not going to count Alabama's loss in September or the way they played in September, then why are we playing games in September? That doesn't make sense to me.
It's a weird cycle, and I think it'll obviously change going into next year when you got a 12-team playoff.
This is a moot point.
And so... But I was looking at that, and there were people putting stuff out where it was like, I almost feel like 12 teams is too much. There are just too many teams. Because there are some teams that I looked at that,
12
and I'm like,
teams would have put Liberty in.
Yeah, and that is not going to be a game. They're going to play Oregon.
I know that's your alma mater.
It is. Wouldn't say proud alumni, but yeah, I am an alumni.
Does it
count if it was online?
Not from the same school, but we both got master's degrees online.
Yeah, does it count if does it really count if it's online?
It doesn't.
I didn't think so. No, I didn't think so.
Yeah, but here's what throws me off is, and I think my big thing is, why are we playing games if they don't matter? Why are we playing games in September if the losses in September don't matter? Why are we playing 13 games if it doesn't matter? The other thing for me is that if you say, well, it's not most deserving, it's best. Best is extremely subjective.
Yeah.
Is Florida State best because they won all 13 games? I would say yes. Is Alabama best because they beat Georgia? You could make an argument, yes. Is Georgia the best even though they lost the game? Sure, you could make that argument too.
Give me in your mind.
It's just very subjective.
Don't be biased because you think you'd have the easier route as a Michigan guy, because that is why I want that to be clear, because the video
for a second?
Video going around of the Michigan, I don't know if it was all players or fans were allowed.
It was the players and coaches
watching it, and they all kind of let out like a groan or like a surprising whatever. I loved it. Everybody kind of making fun and saying they're scared. They're not. They were
scared.
In the same state of shock as everybody else that Florida State didn't get to go.
If you have the chance of, and again, I've already said what I think about Florida State. Do I think Alabama is a better football team than Florida State right now? Sure, I do. But I don't think they should have gone. So what you're seeing from the video is Michigan going, I would have really rather played a second or third string quarterback than Jalen Milroe.
Although I would also say, last year I thought this exact same thing when you guys played TCU.
You're not incorrect.
And
it's the play.
We saw what happened.
All you got to do is get in. But go ahead to your point.
So I think for me, I want to hear from you. Who do you think, because I think to me both things can be true. I think Florida State deserved to go in. But I think as a fan, would I want to watch Michigan and Florida State? No, I would skip that game because.
Well, of course you would.
Well, but I'm going to watch the Alabama game because to me they're going to be two competitive teams. If I have to watch Michigan go, I'm fully expecting it to be a blowout win. I just don't think with what Michigan's defense has compared to what Florida State would throw on the table. I don't see a scenario where that's an entertaining game from a fan's point of view. If I was a Michigan fan, all day I want to see Florida State.
And again, it's not because Florida State is a bad team. It's because
if
it would be
if Jordan Travis was playing,
it would
100%.
It would be an easier path.
Yes,
but again, to your point, I think TCU is a good example of that looked like the easiest path. TCU was still a pretty darn good football team.
But they also were healthy. And
also true.
So I think, and they had their star quarterback.
So what's your question?
So my question is, give me your top four.
Who I would have put in?
Who you would have put in.
Easy. Michigan, Washington, Texas, Florida State. I think the committee got everything right except for that last spot. I don't think there was someone.
So you believe
Reese Davis was kind of trying to pitch this argument that, and I love Reese, but he's annoyed me recently. He was trying to pitch the idea that Washington could jump Michigan to 1. I'm like, Reese, no. Have you watched football this year? Michigan 1, Washington 2, Texas 3 were all correct. The only thing I would switch was Georgia was done. Georgia was not getting in. I know Kirby Smart doesn't want to hear that. Georgia wasn't getting in.
No.
My argument would be best to me is you are best because you won all 13 of your games, including 2 Power 5 road games that they won.
And normally I agree with that had Jordan Travis not been hurt. But I think because there is in the rules, it states that they can make that change based off player availability, whatever. There were a couple other little things they had added on there. If he was playing all day, I would be outraged if Florida State got left out.
Yeah,
but I think the hit that he's gone.
Florida State, and by the way, if Jordan Travis doesn't get hurt, you're looking at Washington, Florida State in the Sugar Bowl, and you're probably looking at Michigan, Texas in the Rose Bowl.
100%.
Which, honestly, beautiful.
Well, and there were people that were...
And even playing Alabama, I know a lot of Michigan fans wanted to see a classic Pac-12 matchup, and I did too. I would have enjoyed seeing Michigan, Washington, or Michigan and Oregon.
Would you have enjoyed that?
I would have enjoyed it from the nostalgia perspective.
Sick.
But getting to play it's a blue blood battle.
Yeah.
I know it's weird to have Alabama in the Rose Bowl, but still, it's going to be phenomenal.
Well, and here's the difference, because I saw a lot of people comparing this Florida State team to the Ohio State team for the first year of the playoffs. And the biggest difference to this was when Ohio State was on their third string quarterback with Cardell Jones, they went out and dismantled Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship.
Yep.
It ended up being 59-0. I mean, they made a statement back then of how can you leave us out because look what we just did.
Yep.
Barely beating Louisville and struggling and not looking good isn't going to do yourself any favors. They needed to go out and they needed to blow them out by 3+ scores to say this is how good we are even with our backups. Then I think the storyline's a little bit different.
I'll admit along with you that they did have an opportunity. Mm-hmm. Now, would it have mattered? If they beat Louisville 21-3, would that have been enough?
No.
I still don't know if it would have been.
No, it needs to be, you need to beat them by 21-28. It has to be an embarrassing blowout loss.
I fully believe that Florida State got robbed in this. At this point, it is what it is. I am at least glad if they're going to get left out, I'm at least glad that we get to see Florida State play Georgia. I think that's going to be a really good matchup. I would have rather seen Ohio State get a shot at Georgia just because I think that would have been a more entertaining matchup. But as it stands, I kind of like the fact that the first two teams out get to play each other. Mm-hmm. how motivated will Georgia be for that game? Probably not, but Florida State will.
Well, that's what I was going to say before we talked about, I think even last week we talked about what's a team you don't want to face going into the playoffs or anything. And for both of us, I think it was Oregon or Washington. Sure. I don't want anything to do with Florida State right now because they're going to come in ticked off.
They're going to come in ticked off. But again, I feel like I'm speaking on both sides of my mouth. They're coming in ticked off with a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
So regardless, you get Michigan and Alabama, which we'll preview in depth the actual bowl games for Michigan and Ohio State in a later episode. We'll do the bowl pick 'em. We'll have all sorts of fun like that. I am excited. I think Michigan, Alabama will be a very good football game. Washington, Texas is going to be a very good.
I'm so jacked for that.
The playoff games are going to be good football games.
Yes, and I think that's where the committee made it right.
Whether I like it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you think it should have been Florida State or versus Alabama, whether you think Georgia should have slipped in there, these are going to be really good football games. And from a watching standpoint, from a media coverage standpoint, that's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll preview all that. I am curious, though, from your perspective as an Ohio State fan. So I've kind of already given my quick spiel on Michigan, Alabama. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's a tough matchup.
Yeah,
it's a tough matchup. It should be
you
a
guys,
lot of fun.
I don't think have played a quarterback like Milroe.
It'll be fascinating. It'll be a really fascinating perspective. How's Michigan's health on the offensive line? Because they look susceptible against Iowa. What does it look like with a month to get healthier? Obviously, Zinter won't be back, but what's it look like to get everybody healthy? All questions we can dissect. But I'm curious from an Ohio State perspective. The assumption was that you guys would be going to Miami to play Louisville in the Orange Bowl. The Orange Bowl has I would think a bit more luster than the Cotton Bowl. Cotton Bowl still New Year's 6.
Yeah.
But you're playing Mizzou. Just from not an analysis standpoint, but just from a gut fan / media level, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't know. Bowl season, honestly.
That's about what I would expect, too.
Honestly, bowl season.
I don't know, is about how you
bowl season is kind of just lost outside of playoff games. It's kind of, or like the lower level tier stuff has kind of lost its appeal to me, only because you look at this and just with how things are nowadays, you go into it and players can sit out. They can get prepped for the draft. I'm ignoring everything that he's doing because I hope he gets a thorn or whatever.
Why would you feel like it's lost its luster?
When you hear Mark Price for 3, it probably takes you back to Old Richfield Coliseum, Gund Arena, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Hey, this is Aaron from the Mark Price for 3 podcast, and each week Mark and I discuss 3 topics: basketball, coaching, and of course, his faith. Subscribe to the Mark Price for 3 podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
With the NIL stuff, with people going out for the draft, you're going to have people that are going to sit out.
It's very woody.
I hope that there's a thorn in your mouth for the rest of your day.
This is what you got to watch on YouTube, by the way, at Rival Pod. Go on.
And so I love that you bought flowers for this podcast and probably not for your wife. And so
there's more flowers in the bouquet over there. Sure. They're going home to my wife.
Sure. After he took some out and put them in his mouth, Lindsay, I want you to know that. And so
this podcast is falling apart.
I want that to be said out loud. It's one of those things where, you look at how things go in the past. You're going to have key players that don't want to risk injury. I get it. They're going to sit out. So Ohio State plays Missouri. If Ohio State's healthy, I think Ohio State is probably a significantly better team than Missouri. But you don't know. And we're going to get into this
what
now.
What roster will you have?
Who's playing? Because if you're telling me, obviously, and we're going to talk more about it, Kyle McCord going into the transfer portal, he ain't playing.
Yeah.
Well, then you look, okay, so you're without your starting quarterback already.
And again, we're recording this on Monday morning, so some of this may come out when we talk about Igbuka and Harrison and Henderson.
Harrison, Stover, JTT, Denzel Burke, Eichenberg, Steele Chamber, Every key player could not be there, and Ohio State could be going into this game with freshmen and sophomores and redshirt juniors that are looking for their first real opportunity on the field.
And also, how I would even say too, how motivated is Ohio State to play the Cotton Bowl?
And I don't think the upperclassmen are.
Yeah,
and rightfully so, because I get it. I think bowl games now, they try to make them like these huge spectacles, and they go, well, look what these teams are going to get. And I look at Missouri and I go, probably a majority of their key players, like their starting quarterback, their starting running back, are going to probably end up playing.
Sure. Well, because Mizzou doesn't have the same standards that Ohio State and Michigan
And that's what I'm saying. So you're going to have these guys that are played very well. Like their running back I already looked at had like 1,400 yards on the ground this year. He's a stud. But he's not in the same level of Travion Henderson, where I feel like Travion probably won't play because he's already been injury prone, doesn't want to risk any further injury going into the draft. I don't see him coming back, although no announcements have been made. That could very well change by the time this is out. But it's just going to look different. And so I want to preface Ohio State fans because I can already sense it because we're insufferable at times where we go through
at most times. In fact,
we're going to go into this game.
It's not the guy who just had a rose in his mouth, but
that's fair. We're going to go into this game. We're going to have all the key players missing all over the board. And there's a realistic chance we lose. And people are going to overreact and talk about the talent gap and whatever. And it's just not going to be the case. The way I'm starting to look at these games is, okay, it's more like an exhibition. They're going to take it seriously, but you're going to have Missouri's starters and you're going to have potentially a Lincoln Kienholz at quarterback with maybe Dallin Hayden. You might have some of your younger guys, so you might get to really see maybe Julian Fleming play still because he wants his draft stock to go up, but you're going to have Brandon Ennis. You're going to have
Carnell Tate.
You're going to have those guys that are going to be getting significant minutes, which we had this happen a couple years ago against Utah, and that's where Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison kind of showed out.
Yeah, I'll still say though, in that particular Rose Bowl game, Utah was basically playing corner with a running back, and so.
But I'm just saying,
Smith and Jigba is a good player, but also let's look at who was trying to cover him.
Well, but I'm saying, and they still had CJ. So, I mean, you're looking at it a little bit differently, but that's how the game has changed over the years. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, all the star players still played. The bowl games were a huge deal. Even if you didn't go to the championship game, you still wanted to win your bowl game. Nowadays, they just don't have that appeal. Yeah. They just don't.
You know who doesn't get a bowl game? Michigan State.
Embarrassing.
And there's even something called the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and Michigan State can't even make that. One of my favorite bits of analysis that I did this week is, and it's the numbers are, it's somewhere in this ballpark, but if the college football playoff would have expanded to 108 teams this year, Michigan State still would not have made the postseason.
Oh, it's embarrassing.
And I love that.
And this also could change, but I'm pretty sure every single quarterback on their roster is in the transfer portal.
I know Caton Hauser is. I believe Noah Kim is.
Noah Kim is, and there was another guy that was out. I think there might be one lone quarterback on that roster right now.
Can Kenneth Walker come back and play quarterback too? Kenneth Walker.
Kirk Cousins might be there again for his 17th year of eligibility.
Before we jump into the transfer portal, if you will, want to say big thanks to our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction. Aaron Carroll and his team sponsoring the podcast again this year. They do phenomenal work. There's no guesswork with them. Integrity is literally in their name. They'll walk you through every step of the process. Whatever your building project is, go with Integrity at elevatedintegrity.com. Also want to say big thanks to our friends at the J Company. Fall in love with your home all over again at the jaecompany.com. On social media at RivalPod, talking Instagram, Twitter /X, whatever we're calling it now, and YouTube as well at RivalPod. One of the things that you'll find at RivalPod when you follow along is some of these games, you kind of get this behind the scenes look. So we had the opportunity to be at the game in Ann Arbor a couple weeks ago.
Yep. And we've done a bunch of trips too. I mean, we went to Notre Dame this year.
Penn State last year.
Went to Penn State last year. Went to Atlanta last year for the semifinal. You were just this past weekend. If you already are following us, you saw this. Yeah. But if not, you should go check it out. You were in Indy this past weekend for the championship game.
What a cool experience. Indianapolis was fantastic. I don't know how to explain this, but so the Indiana Convention Center connects to Lucas Oil Stadium, and they have this big thing called Big Ten Championship Fan Fest. And they've got, football throwing competitions, 40-yard dash. Some of the bands are there playing. It's a really, they've got big screen TV. It's very cool. One of the things that I realized at Fan Fest is that I think it's impossible to hate an Iowa fan.
They're too nice.
Because everybody, it was the most polar opposite from being at the game the week before in Ann Arbor. And you can just fill in the blank there. Okay. It's Garbage Free Podcast, but fill in the blank what that atmosphere is like. And this is like Michigan and Iowa fans just walking around. Oh yeah, like my wife's an Iowa fan and I'm a Michigan fan. Let's go, let's go do the 40-yard dash together. Like it's just, it is phenomenal. I've got a good buddy named Josiah who he actually lives in Georgia now, but he's a big Hawkeye fan. So he's like texting me in the morning like, hey, go Hawks, try not to embarrass us. You and I wouldn't even talk the day of the game.
No, I sent you a text and it was work related, and I said, do not respond back to me.
A completely different phenomenon. So got a lot of behind the scenes of going into Lucas Oil Stadium, what it's like to be up press level, what it's like to be on the field, what that trip looks like, and just try and take you behind the scenes for the sights, sounds, emotions, and atmospheres that make college football so amazing. We want the opportunity to do that again in the college football playoffs. Michigan headed to the Rose Bowl, hopefully also a national title trip there, Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. And we've got a GoFundMe that just launched.
Yeah, kind of like I don't think it's technically a GoFundMe.
Is it a Kickstart thing?
This sounds sketchy and probably not the best sell. It's like just a random link that we use.
No, let's not say random link. That's not helpful. No, but here's the point though. Like if you love the podcast, if you've listened for a while, you've maybe heard about Patreon and thought, yeah, I'm not really a monthly giving type of person, but I love what you guys do. I want to support your chances to go do things like the Rose Bowl or the national title. I want that behind the scenes content. I want to feel like I'm there. This little Kickstart GoFundMe would be a perfect place for you. We've got some t-shirts, we've got some stickers, some different treats to say, hey, thank you for supporting the podcast. We'll have the link in the description below in this episode. It'll be pinned to our Twitter account. It'll be in our Instagram bio. Yep. We'll have it all over social at Rival Pod. Just a way to say thank you, helping us say yes to these opportunities. And by the way, if for some reason credential applications are submitted, but if they come back and we're not able to do the Rose Bowl or what have you, this will still go towards helping the podcast in the future in some way, shape, or form.
There's some key games next year that we're already looking at and trying to budget for, like Ohio State going to Oregon, and stuff like that. They're going to be at Penn State again.
I think Michigan's out west at some point. So yeah, a lot of your support really makes a difference. It was a huge help last year in going to the Peach Bowl. Any way that you can get involved, would love to have you come on board. You can find that on social media at Rival Pod, and we'll be sure that it's up at riverradio.com/rivalry as well.
And now it's time, because some big news broke this morning, and we both were, crazy news. So fast that we both tweeted it at the exact same time, basically, from the Rivalry
we had a
account.
come to Jesus moment about who's covering what at what times, and that's fine.
And so if you're not already aware by the time you're seeing this, Kyle McCord has officially entered the transfer portal. Huge news. Honestly, didn't expect it.
Yeah, well, it was assumed, and correct me if I'm wrong here as a Michigan guy, but like my assumption was that he was going to go into next season and battle it out with Lincoln Keenholz and Aaron Noland for the starting job, right?
So there had been a swirling of rumors that Ohio State was going to look to the portal to add a veteran or at least another quarterback candidate. There were rumors flying around that it would be more from UCLA. You heard Cam Ward from Washington State.
Dylan Gabriel's now in the portal as well.
Dylan Gabriel also announced this morning tons and tons of quarterbacks that I would say are above average starters in college football in the portal. So I think it was kind of well known that Ohio State was going to do something there, but I think it was more so of a Kyle McCord is still, as of now, QB1. And while I don't know if I think, unless they had like a Cam Ward come in, I don't feel like even with Moore coming in that immediately replaced McCord, but I think it was a future investment. But I think that stuff was kind of widely speculated among Buckeye fans that like something at quarterback was going to happen.
Sure.
It just wasn't set in stone. Nobody had come out and said he will not be the starter.
Yeah.
I know yesterday after the committee made their decisions, there were people that were asking Ryan Day during his press conference if he was committing to McCord, and he just said there's a lot of things that we need to look at, and he was very non-committal in regards to that. And then obviously this morning on Monday, before we come out to record, Kyle McCord enters the transfer portal. To me, it says several things. To me, I look at this and I go, well, this was clearly in the plans. A lot of people...
You think so?
I think so, because I think, to me, just the way it happened, the way everything gets announced yesterday, they find out... I think they were kind of waiting to find out whether or not they would sneak into the playoffs again. And then once they found out where they were going, they kind of had the conversation with all the players where Ryan Day, even in his meeting, said, we're going to sit down with each individual player and discuss them sitting out for the bowl and kind of what future stuff looks like. And I think they had that conversation with McCord where they said, look, here's our overall thoughts on how you did this season. Here's where we're standing as a program. Here's the direction we would like to be. And I think they said the level he was at was good, but not where they needed it to be. And I think they had a real honest conversation with him and said, we're going to look at all opportunities to grow this.
Do you think it was a Cade McNamara, I'm scared of the quarterback battle type thing?
I don't know if it was.
And again, this is all speculation at this point. It's still very early.
I don't know if I place them in the same category, but the situation is similar.
Because Cade's won a Big Ten title?
No, because Cade is a giant baby. And
I don't think I told you this. I walked past Cade McNamara in the bowels of Lucas Oil.
Wow.
That's it. That's my story.
That's where he belongs.
I didn't say. I think they left him there.
They should have. You know what? Because
he was looking for the bus, and anyway, go on.
I just think it's different. The attitude is different. I think McNamara, and maybe this could change because Kyle McCord's obviously not spoken to anybody or said anything to the media. And I think what makes me think that it's different is McNamara came across very butthurt over all of the stuff.
Yeah.
And we just haven't heard any comments from McCord. So I'll be curious when he actually has any media availability. Once he commits to a new team, they're obviously going to want to ask him about his decision.
Sure, yeah.
And that maybe my opinion will change then.
Yeah.
But to me, it's similar in the same sense that I feel, and I would stand on this hill. I feel like Kyle McCord did enough this year that I feel comfortable with him being a starter next year. Do I think?
Man, I don't know.
I think so.
Again, I'm trying to put myself in your position. I feel like I would. I don't know that I would say that he wouldn't be the starter, but I would definitely want to see a quarterback battle.
It depends. Here's where I ultimately stand. If we got a guy,
you know the ceiling for Kyle.
If we get a guy, I don't know if we do. I don't know if we do. I think if we go into the season,
I think we've seen the season. I think we've seen the ceiling, especially with guys like Stover and Igbuka and Harrison Jr. leaving. I think you've seen the ceiling for Kyle.
I don't know. It's tough to say because it was his first full year, and I feel like even if you looked at JJ and you saw from year one when he was a full-time starter to now, there was still a difference. And so I'm not a huge fan on giving up on a guy after one full year when his one full year was still productive and I saw glimpses. So while I would state that there's obvious struggles, there were things that I would like for him to have cleaned up. I saw Devin Brown play football and it was gross. And
I don't think Devin Brown is part of the conversation.
So here's where I stand. If you get a transfer like a Moore or you get a guy like Cam Ward, then obviously there's going to be a quarterback battle. I'm fine with it. But if our quarterback room stayed the same, we bring in Aaron Nolan next year, I'm comfortable with McCord being QB1. And I think a lot of Ohio State's issues are just he's the easy scapegoat. I don't think a lot, and I'm not saying Kyle McCord was blameless in the Michigan loss, but he is not the sole reason they lost that game. There are other factors to it.
I would agree with that.
There are other factors to it. He is the easy scapegoat. And I don't like that narrative. And I'm not going to sit here and defend him and say
there was quarterback play issues. There's offensive line issues. There was coaching issues.
Wide receiver drops. There's coaching stuff. There's a variety of things. At some point,
you also have to give credit to Michigan too.
I have in the past.
No, you have.
But I'm not ever going to sit there and blame one guy, and I'm not going to sit here and also defend him and make it seem like he was the greatest quarterback to ever wear scarlet and gray. But to sit here and make it seem like he was so bad that he doesn't deserve to be the starter, I don't agree with.
I don't think that would be fair.
100%. I think 100% if he goes into next season as a starter, I still feel like with the talent we have around us, I still think Dallin Hayden's going to be a stud. I still think our freshman wide receivers are going to be good. We've got we're going to lose Cade Stover, which is going to hurt at the tight end, but we still have playmakers. We're still Ohio State, so I'm not crazy worried about it. But I honestly do believe there's a plan. I feel like they had that honest face-to-face conversation, and I feel like McCord kind of had that mindset of, what did you want me to do? I went out there against Notre Dame on the road and played well and got a win. We beat Notre Dame. We were in it. The Michigan game, I don't feel like he fully thinks is his fault, as he shouldn't. And I think he goes, I played well enough. I was second in the Big Ten in a majority of the statistical categories. What else could I have done outside of that one particular game? I
feel like you're overthinking it. I feel like it's him looking at going, I don't really want to do the quarterback battle thing. He's looking at some of the freshmen coming in, whether it's Lincoln, whether it's Aaron Noland. He's looking at who's in the portal and going, I don't know that I'm going to start. I think for him, it's him comparing himself to the other available options and going, I don't think I'm going to get it. So I'd rather go play somewhere.
But that's what I'm saying.
I think it's that simple.
I think that backs up my point of like there being a plan, because I think if he goes into it going up against a guy like Aaron Noland, I think he thinks he's still the starter. So I think if you're looking at transfer guys and you go, I can't start over them. First off, that's a problem for a quarterback. But then
you're not incorrect.
But then second off, if you're thinking that tells me that you've had conversations within the program where they're saying we are looking at these guys.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like you can beat them out in a quarterback battle, that tells me that they basically have something solidified already. And you having 1 year left of college eligibility, want to give yourself the best chance to go play. Because I saw a tweet I agree with it. Who's going to better develop a quarterback? Who's going to have better position players for him? He's not going to go start at another school that's going to be comparable to Ohio State.
No.
So he's downgrading wherever he goes. He's going because he wants to play somewhere.
Sure.
And so that to me tells me there's a plan in place.
I agree with
whoever it ends up being.
I agree with you all the way up to, like, I believe that there's a plan, but I think you're getting too specific on the plan. I think the plan is we're going to look at all of our options. I think that's the extent of the plan. I don't think that there's any, like, we've targeted Dylan Gabriel already, and, kind of the way Notre Dame seems to have with Riley Leonard. I don't think there's a plan like that, like, oh, we've got our guy or we know. I think it's more, we're going to look at all our options. And Kyle said, okay, I think I need to take mine. I think it's that simple.
I don't know if I disagree with that, but I do think that there are certain targets that they've already been in contact with. That
I'm sure there are.
The chances we will not see a season next year with Ohio State where Devin Brown or even Lincoln Kienholz or Aaron Noland start.
Oh, I disagree with you.
I don't think so.
I disagree with you completely. I have said, I know Ohio State internally is really big on Lincoln. I fully expect him, barring a transfer portal quarterback, which I also kind of expect to happen. But I think Lincoln is likely to be the starter. I really do.
As long as it's not Devin Brown, honestly, I'm fine with that. So,
and I think you'll see Link in the Mizzou game as well. We'll break all that down. We'll get to that. Do you feel like, and this is my last question for you, do you feel like from the bull rep perspective that they looked at how soft Ohio State was and felt they'd be a good fit for the Cotton Bowl?
I know what you're going to say. The joke's not even good. The joke isn't even good.
Thanks for subscribing at Rival Pod. Consider becoming a Kickstart member if you want more content like this. Oh,
Boo
boy.
this man.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at RivalPod. Visit our Patreon and consider becoming a patron for exclusive bonus content, merch, and more. And be sure to follow us wherever you're listening now for new episodes every Tuesday. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.